The spark of humanity's rage. The stars glittered brightly in the vastness of space, a calm and peaceful scene, untouched by war or conflict. For countless years, civilizations across the galaxy coexisted in a delicate balance. But everything changed the moment the alien fleet arrived at Earth's borders. It began with a single ship, dark and foreboding against the backdrop of the stars. It wasn't like anything humanity had ever seen before. Its design was sleek, sharp, and menacing, a stark contrast to the peaceful ships humanity had come to know from distant allies. No one knew where it came from or what it wanted, but one thing was clear: it wasn't here to make peace. News spread across Earth like wildfire. The government scrambled to make sense of the strange ship, trying to communicate with it, hoping to prevent any conflict. But it didn't answer their calls. Instead, it hovered ominously, sending a wave of fear through every human heart. Soon, more ships arrived, dozens, hundreds, until Earth's skies were filled with a dark, threatening armada. The world held its breath. What did these alien beings want? What were their intentions? The military mobilized, and global defense systems were activated. But even with humanity's best technology, they were powerless against the overwhelming force before them. The aliens made no demands, but their silence spoke volumes. For the first time in history, humanity faced a threat that could not be stopped. The United Nations held an emergency meeting. Leaders from every corner of Earth gathered, their faces grim, eyes filled with concern. "We must find a way to communicate with them," said General Hernandez, leader of the Earth Defense Coalition. "We have to negotiate." "But what if they won't negotiate?" replied President Singh, her voice cold and determined. "What if they are here to destroy us? We cannot afford to take that chance." The debate raged on for hours, with no clear answers. But in the background, one person was silently working away, far from the attention of the world's leaders. Dr. Emily Carter, a brilliant scientist, had been studying ancient texts and long-forgotten human history. She had recently uncovered something that made her blood run cold, a legend, one that had been passed down through generations, hidden away in the deepest archives of humanity's past. The legend spoke of a time long ago, when humans were not just explorers of space but rulers of it. They had created weapons of unimaginable power, tools capable of destroying entire star systems. But those weapons had been buried, lost to time, and erased from history, until now. As the alien armada loomed closer, Emily's discovery became even more important. She had found the key to unlocking humanity's forgotten past, a weapon that could tip the scales in their favor. But there was a problem. The weapon was only a myth. There was no proof that it even existed. It was just a story, one that the universe had long since forgotten. Yet, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the weapon was real. She had spent weeks deciphering the texts, piecing together ancient knowledge. The weapon, if it existed, could turn the tide against the alien invaders. But the question remained: would it work? Could humanity truly harness the power of their ancestors? Or was it just an impossible dream? Emily wasn't the only one who was thinking this way. As the alien ships drew closer, panic began to take hold of Earth. People were scared, unsure of what the future held. Governments began preparing for the worst, but no one could shake the sense of dread that settled over them. Humanity was facing an existential crisis, one that threatened to end their entire existence. But as the tension mounted, something unexpected happened. The alien fleet began to move, its ships shifting and aligning in a strange, almost deliberate pattern. It was as if they were preparing for something beyond just a simple invasion. The ships were closing in, ready to strike. As the world watched, holding its breath, Dr. Carter's voice rang out in the silence. "I know where it is," she whispered, staring at the data on her screen. The room went quiet. She turned to the others, her face filled with a mix of fear and determination. "The weapon, it's real. I can activate it, but we need to move fast." The scientists and military leaders gathered around, their eyes wide with disbelief. Emily had found it, humanity's last hope. But even as she spoke, the reality of the situation sank in. They had only one chance to use the weapon. If it worked, humanity would survive. If it failed, there would be no second chances. The alien armada was too powerful, too vast, and time was running out. As the first shot was fired from the alien ships, the world held its breath. Would Emily's weapon be the answer? Or would humanity fall under the shadow of the invaders? In that moment, everything changed. The spark of humanity's rage had been lit, and with it, the universe would never be the same again. The unleashing of wrath. The air was thick with tension as the alien fleet moved into position. From every corner of Earth, eyes were glued to the skies. The looming ships cast long, menacing shadows over the planet. People had never felt so small, so powerless. Yet, amid the growing fear, something inside humanity began to stir, a raw, burning need to fight back. In the command center, Dr. Emily Carter and her team worked furiously. They had mere minutes to access the weapon. The room was filled with a palpable sense of urgency. Emily's hands trembled as she typed commands into the terminal, her mind racing. Could this really work? Could the long-lost legacy of humanity's ancient power be resurrected in time to save them all? "Dr. Carter, we need to hurry," said General Hernandez, his voice tight with anxiety. He stood at her side, watching the countdown on the screen. "The fleet is within range. We don't have much time left." "I know," Emily replied, her voice strained but determined. "Just one more sequence. This is it. This is humanity's only chance." Meanwhile, the alien ships were preparing to strike. Their sleek, metallic bodies shimmered in the light of distant stars, their weapons primed for destruction. These were not the kind of invaders that negotiated. They came to conquer. Their message had been clear from the start. Earth would fall. Across the globe, the people of Earth watched as the first shots were fired. The brilliant flash of light erupted from the alien ships, cutting through the atmosphere with deadly precision. For a moment, the world seemed to stop, time itself holding its breath. Then came the roar of the world's defense forces. The skies above Earth lit up with the glow of returning fire. But despite their best efforts, humanity's weapons seemed like nothing more than sparks against the overwhelming might of the alien invaders. The fight had begun. As humanity's armies launched their counterattack, the fear that had gripped Earth began to turn into something else, something far more dangerous. Rage. A fury that had long been dormant, buried beneath years of peace and complacency, now surged to the surface. But this rage was not a mindless anger. It was calculated. It was the fury of a species that had been underestimated for centuries, that had been kept in the shadows of the galaxy's vast expanse. Now, humanity was ready to remind the universe what they were capable of. "General Hernandez, we're ready," Emily said, her voice cutting through the chaos in the command room. The general nodded. "Activate the weapon. Now." In that moment, the room fell silent. All eyes were on the screen as Emily typed in the final code. The weapon, a forgotten relic of humanity's ancient past, was finally coming online. At first, nothing happened. Then, a faint hum began to fill the air. The hum grew louder, turning into a deep, resonating sound that seemed to shake the very foundation of the Earth. A pulse of energy shot into the sky, and the alien ships stopped. They hovered in place, unsure of what they were seeing. For a brief moment, it seemed as if the universe had paused, waiting. Then the energy intensified. In space, the alien fleet was caught off guard. The massive black ships began to shimmer, their hulls flickering with strange, unnatural light. The energy that had been unleashed from the depths of Earth's ancient past was now making its mark. The power surged outward, disrupting the very fabric of the alien ship's technology. The fleet trembled, and then, to the shock of everyone on Earth, the first ship exploded. It wasn't just an ordinary explosion. It was as if the ship had been torn apart by a force far greater than anything its technology had ever encountered. The energy wave rippled through the rest of the fleet, causing chaos among the invaders. "It's working," Emily exclaimed, her eyes wide with disbelief. "The weapon, it's really working." On Earth, people stared at the sky, their eyes filled with a mixture of awe and fear. The once imposing alien fleet was now in disarray, their ships crashing into one another as they struggled to maintain control. It was a sight no one had ever expected to see, a victory in the making. But even as the first signs of victory appeared, the alien fleet's leaders were not sitting idle. They had underestimated humanity, yes, but they were not without resources. Within moments, the surviving ships regrouped, and their weapons began to power up once more. "They're not finished," General Hernandez said grimly, his voice carrying a sense of urgency. "We've only won the first round. They'll retaliate." Emily nodded, but her expression remained determined. "We're not backing down. Humanity has just begun to fight." The power of the ancient weapon surged again, amplifying the energy field around Earth. The skies themselves seemed to crackle with energy, a storm of raw power and rage that humanity had unleashed upon the invaders. But even as humanity's wrath swirled around the alien fleet, there was something else, something darker, more primal, hidden beneath the surface. A truth that humanity was just beginning to understand. This battle was not just for survival. It was a battle for the soul of the galaxy. The universe had trembled, and now it would have to face the consequences of underestimating humanity. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, humanity had the upper hand, and they weren't about to let go. The wrath unleashed. The alien fleet regrouped in space, its ships battered and disoriented by the unexpected force they had encountered. Their powerful warships, designed to crush entire civilizations with ease, now faced an unknown power that seemed to defy logic and technology. But the invaders were relentless. The loss of one ship, even if catastrophic, would not deter them. They had come to conquer, and they would not stop until Earth was nothing more than a memory in the stars. Back on Earth, the atmosphere was charged with a mixture of fear and defiance. Humanity had never faced a threat like this before, but the ancient weapon that had been unleashed was only the beginning. The response from the alien fleet proved that they weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their place in the universe, for their pride. General Hernandez stood at the front of the command room, staring at the holographic map of the Earth's atmosphere. "They'll be back, and when they come, they'll bring everything they have." Dr. Emily Carter was still working at her console, her eyes flicking over data from the energy pulse. "The weapon's power is still holding," she said. "We've disrupted their shields and engines, but we need more. The fleet is far from defeated. If we don't strike again, they'll regroup and counterattack. We need more time," Hernandez muttered, his hand resting on the console. "We can't afford to wait for them to launch another offensive. We need reinforcements. We need to prepare for the next phase." A tense silence hung in the room as the team processed the grim reality. Humanity had taken the first step, but now the real battle was about to begin. The invaders would learn that humanity was not so easily crushed. This fight had only just begun, and the power of the ancient weapon would be their last, best hope for survival. The alien fleet, once mighty and seemingly invincible, now floundered in the wake of their unexpected defeat. Their leaders, perched in the command center aboard their massive flagship, exchanged frantic glances. Despite their technological superiority, they had been thrown off balance by the surge of energy from Earth. This was no ordinary species. The humans had shown an unexpected resilience, tapping into an ancient force that defied the laws of the galaxy. "They're stronger than we thought," the alien commander said, his voice shaking with anger. "How could this happen? Their primitive weapons were no match for our fleet." "But it was not their weapons," his second-in-command replied, her voice low with awe and fear. "It was something else. Something ancient. We felt its power. It was like nothing we've ever encountered. Then it's true, the commander whispered, his eyes wide with disbelief. They were not just a myth. They were real. For centuries, the galaxy had spoken of humanity as little more than a forgotten legend, a species that had once ruled the stars, only to vanish into obscurity. The alien races that now dominated the galaxy dismissed Earth as a faint memory. But something had changed. Humanity was back, and they were not the helpless species the galaxy had assumed them to be. On Earth, humanity prepared for the inevitable counterstrike. The first attack had rattled the alien fleet, but it was only a temporary setback. As the general and Emily continued to analyze the situation, the true magnitude of what was at stake began to set in. This wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about surviving an existential threat to their very existence. Emily looked up from her screen, her face pale. "General, the weapon is drawing on energy that's beyond anything we've ever encountered. It's unstable. If we fire it again, there's no telling what will happen. We might end up destroying more than just the alien fleet." "I don't care," Hernandez replied, his voice hard with resolve. "The alternative is worse. We're not just defending Earth. We're defending our future. We don't have a choice." And so, the decision was made. The weapon would fire again. As the countdown began, Earth's forces readied themselves for what could be the final battle. The alien fleet was recovering, but the humans were not backing down. The energy that had surged through their ancient weapon now swirled like a storm, building to a terrifying climax. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was about to witness humanity's true power. Up in the sky, the alien ships regrouped, their weapons ready to fire once more. They had underestimated humanity once, and now they would pay the price. They would learn that the forgotten race of humans was not just a legend. They were real, and they were angry. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The pulse of energy shot into the sky once again, brighter and more intense than before. This time, the alien fleet was not just shaken, it was destroyed. The energy burst through their shields, disintegrating their ships with brutal efficiency. The sky seemed to crack open as the pulse expanded, pushing outward from Earth, beyond the edges of the solar system. In that moment, the invaders knew. They had underestimated humanity. They had thought of them as weak, primitive, but they were wrong. Humanity had risen, and they were not going to fall easily. The universe trembled. The galaxy would never be the same again. As the dust settled, and the alien fleet was reduced to nothing more than debris floating in the cold vacuum of space, Earth let out a collective sigh of relief. The battle was over, for now, but there was no doubt that this victory had come at a heavy cost. The weapon that had saved humanity also carried an immense price, one that the world would have to reckon with in the days to come. For now, though, the universe knew the truth. Humanity had awakened, and they would not be forgotten again. The reckoning. The calm after the storm was palpable. Earth's military forces, still reeling from the magnitude of the battle, slowly began to process the destruction of the alien fleet. For years, they had lived in fear of the Galactic Empire, an empire so vast and powerful that humanity had been written off as little more than a myth. But now, with the fleet scattered and broken, a new dawn had arrived. A dawn where humanity would never again be underestimated. In the command room of Earth's central military hub, General Hernandez paced back and forth, still shaken by the events of the past hours. The battle had been fierce, but it was over, or so they thought. "General," Dr. Emily Carter said, her voice filled with uncertainty. "We've detected strange energy readings coming from the remnants of the fleet. It's not over. They're still alive." Hernandez stopped pacing, his heart sinking. "What do you mean, alive? The fleet was destroyed." "I don't think we truly destroyed them," she replied, looking at the holographic readouts. "Their technology is more advanced than we imagined. We've only delayed them. They're regrouping." Hernandez clenched his fists. So the war isn't over. We've just given them time to prepare. What do we do now? Emily looked up, her eyes filled with determination. We do what we've always done. We fight back. In the distant reaches of space, the remaining alien forces were in disarray. Their massive flagship, once a symbol of invincibility, was now a smoldering husk. But the aliens weren't going to retreat. They were planning their next move, and they would stop at nothing to exact revenge on the humans who had dared to defy them. The alien commander stood before his council, his face twisted in rage. The defeat had been unexpected. But there was one thing he knew for certain. Humanity had struck the first blow, but the galaxy would soon learn that the true power of the universe was still in the hands of the Galactic Empire. They would not fall to a species that had been forgotten for so long. We will return to Earth, the commander declared. And this time, we will not make the same mistake. The humans will feel our wrath, and we will destroy them. Back on Earth, the world had changed. People who had once lived in fear now walked with their heads held high. They had faced the impossible, and they had won. But deep down, they knew that their victory had come with a cost. The weapon that had unleashed humanity's fury was unstable, its energy drawing from sources unknown. And now, as the world began to rebuild, a new threat loomed on the horizon. The government had mobilized its forces, reinforcing Earth's defenses. New ships were constructed, new weapons forged, and the world's brightest minds were hard at work researching the weapon that had turned the tide. But the question on everyone's mind was the same. What would happen when the aliens returned? Hernandez stood before a group of high-ranking officials, each one bearing the weight of the war that had just begun. "We can't afford to be complacent," he said, his voice steady but filled with the gravity of the situation. "The aliens will come back. They've learned from their mistakes, and they won't make the same errors again. We need to be ready." Emily stepped forward, her expression resolute. "We have the weapon, General. We don't just have the power to defend ourselves. We have the power to end this war once and for all." But Hernandez shook his head. "The weapon's unstable, Emily. If we use it again, we could destroy everything we've worked for. We need a new strategy. We need to find a way to counter their advances without risking our entire planet." The room fell into a heavy silence as everyone considered the options. The weapon had given humanity its first taste of victory, but it had come at a great cost. They had not only destroyed the alien fleet, they had potentially set the stage for an even greater battle. What would happen if they couldn't find a way to harness the weapon's power without destroying themselves in the process? In space, the alien forces were indeed regrouping. But this time, they were not alone. The defeated Earth had sent shockwaves through the galaxy, and now, old alliances were being tested. Some alien factions, once allies of the Galactic Empire, had begun to question their loyalty. The humans had proven that they were no longer the weak, forgotten species that had once been wiped out. There were whispers of rebellion within the Empire, of other races beginning to rise up against their oppressors. But the commander of the alien fleet, though humiliated, was determined to crush the humans once and for all. He knew that if they failed to reclaim their dominance over Earth, their entire empire would be at risk. This was not just about revenge, it was about survival. "We will take Earth," the commander said, his voice filled with icy determination. "We will tear their world apart if we have to. And this time, we will not fail." Back on Earth, the clock was ticking. The aliens were preparing their final assault, and humanity was in a race against time to prepare for the inevitable conflict. The question wasn't whether the aliens would return. It was when. Every day brought new revelations about the weapon's power, and every day they grew closer to understanding just how much control they had over their own fate. The tension was palpable. The humans were stronger than ever, but the aliens were determined to regain control. As the battle lines were drawn, the universe watched, knowing that the fate of Earth, and perhaps the galaxy, would be decided in the coming months. Humanity had awoken, and there was no going back. The real war was only just beginning. The calm before the storm. The universe, once again, held its breath. The last few weeks had been a whirlwind of preparations. Earth's military had made significant progress in developing the weapons necessary to defend against the alien empire's return. Across the globe, the fear that had once gripped humanity had slowly begun to fade, replaced by a sense of purpose. But deep inside, they all knew the truth. The coming storm would be unlike anything they had ever faced. General Hernandez stood in his private quarters, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. His mind raced as he weighed the potential of every strategy, every asset available to him. The aliens were coming, and Earth's forces had to be ready. No longer could they afford to be reactive. They needed to strike first. "General," a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Dr. Emily Carter, her face filled with both concern and determination. "We've made a breakthrough. The weapon. We believe we can stabilize it." Hernandez turned to face her, his heart quickening. "Stabilize it? How?" Emily's eyes lit up with the excitement of the discovery. "We found a way to harness the energy without risking a catastrophic failure. It's still dangerous, but it can be used in a controlled manner. We've also developed new energy shields for our ships. The weapon can be deployed strategically, and it won't destroy everything in its path. But we need to use it sparingly." Hernandez felt a glimmer of hope. For weeks, the weapon had been their greatest asset and their greatest liability. The idea that they might finally be able to control its power without turning it into a disaster was a small victory. But there was no time to waste. "When can we test it?" Emily hesitated for a moment, her mind working through the potential consequences. "We could begin within a few days, but the risk remains high. If anything goes wrong, we might not get a second chance." The general understood. The aliens were coming, and the stakes could not be higher. Earth had a small window of opportunity to strike. The question was, should they wait for the enemy to come to them, or should they take the fight to the stars? Light years away, in the vast darkness of space, the alien fleet was reassembling. Their numbers had been diminished, but their resolve had only strengthened. The Galactic Empire, though shaken, was not broken. Their commanders had learned from their mistakes, and their next move would be one of destruction. "We cannot afford another failure," the alien commander said to his subordinates, his voice cold and commanding. "Prepare the fleet. We will strike at Earth with everything we have." His council nodded, their faces unreadable. They understood the importance of the mission. Earth was no longer a backwater planet. Humanity had proven itself dangerous, unpredictable, and resilient. If the galaxy's empire allowed them to survive, it would be an embarrassment, one that could cost them more than just a war. It could unravel their entire dominion. "All ships will be equipped with the latest technology. We will wipe Earth from existence if we have to." Back on Earth, the time for hesitation was over. Hernandez had made his decision. The weapon would be deployed. Their best scientists had assured him that it could be controlled, though the risk was immense. They were ready to use every advantage they had, even if it meant playing with forces beyond their comprehension. At the same time, a new wave of uncertainty began to build among the people. With news of the impending war spreading, some began to question the wisdom of continuing to fight. There were those who believed humanity should negotiate, seek peace, and avoid escalating the conflict further. The weapon, after all, was not without its risks. If it failed again, humanity could be destroyed just as easily as their enemies. But there were others who saw this as their only chance to finally stand up to the empire. The question of survival was no longer abstract, it was real. The war was coming, whether they were ready or not. In the military command center, Hernandez addressed his commanders and the head of the scientific council. The room was filled with a palpable sense of urgency. The fate of Earth rested on their shoulders. "We have no choice," Hernandez said. His voice was steady, but beneath it lay the weight of the responsibility. "We fight, or we perish. The enemy is already on its way. We don't know how long we have, but we know one thing for sure. When the fleet arrives, we will be ready." The tension in the room was thick. There were no words spoken, but each person understood the gravity of the situation. This would not be a conventional battle. The stakes were beyond anything humanity had ever known. The very survival of their world was at risk. In space, the alien fleet moved closer to Earth, its engines burning bright against the void. The galaxy watched, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. The two sides were destined to clash, and the consequences would be felt across the stars. Would humanity survive the wrath of the Empire, or would they be swept away in the tidal wave of galactic power? Back on Earth, the final preparations were underway. Ships were outfitted, weapons tested, and the weapon that had caused so much fear and awe was readied for deployment. They had no idea what the future held, but they knew one thing. Humanity would face its greatest challenge yet. The storm was coming, and this time, humanity would not be caught off guard. The clash of powers. The universe held its breath as two colossal forces prepared to collide. Earth, once a forgotten speck in the vast expanse of space, had become the center of a cosmic struggle. On one side, the alien empire, vast and seemingly invincible. On the other, humanity, driven by desperation, resolve, and an unyielding desire to survive. The stakes could not have been higher. General Hernandez stood before his command, his eyes scanning the room. Each officer in the room knew what was at risk: the survival of Earth itself. The final plan had been set into motion. The weapon, a creation born out of sheer necessity and unrelenting ambition, would be humanity's trump card. But as the tension mounted, there was no certainty, only the cold, harsh reality of what lay ahead. "Remember," Hernandez's voice rang out, calm yet filled with the weight of command. "This is not just about defending Earth. This is about proving to the galaxy that humanity is no longer the weak species it once was. We fight not only for our world, but for the future of all civilizations that may rise in our wake." A wave of resolve passed through the room. The soldiers, the scientists, the strategists, everyone present understood that humanity's actions today would echo throughout the universe. In the cold darkness of space, the alien fleet loomed, ready for battle. The command ship, the largest and most powerful in the fleet, was a sight to behold. Its metallic surface gleamed like a jagged star, reflecting the cold light of distant suns. On board, the alien commander stood, observing the approaching human forces. "This is it," the commander said, his voice quiet but filled with contempt. "The human world is about to learn the price of defiance. They are foolish to think they can challenge us, but we will show them that their struggle is meaningless." The alien forces, although shaken by their previous defeat, had adapted. New weapons, new strategies, and new technologies had been implemented. This time, they would not be caught off guard. This time, they would crush humanity before it had a chance to strike back. But as the fleet prepared for the final approach, something unexpected happened. The human ships, once small and outdated, had transformed. They were no longer the primitive vessels the aliens had once encountered. The human fleet was equipped with advanced technology, the likes of which the Empire had never seen. And at the forefront of it all was the Dreadnought, humanity's greatest weapon, a vessel of unimaginable power, ready to unleash its fury on the invaders. Back on Earth, the world watched with bated breath as the final countdown began. The last few days had been a blur of preparations, from loading weapons onto ships to organizing the ground forces. People gathered in cities, looking up at the skies, wondering if they would ever see the sunrise again. The tension was unbearable. On the communication channels, updates were being broadcasted in real time. The human fleet, a diverse coalition of nations and military factions, had come together like never before. They were united by a common purpose: survival. "We have 2 hours," the commander of the Dreadnought's fleet said, his voice steady but filled with a quiet urgency. "Prepare for the worst." And then, as if on cue, the alert sounded. The alien fleet had entered Earth's orbit. The battle had begun. In space, the first shots were fired. The human fleet responded swiftly, unleashing waves of energy blasts, laser beams, and missiles toward the approaching alien ships. The dreadnought, leading the charge, fired its primary weapon, an intense beam of energy that cut through the darkness like a knife through silk. The impact was catastrophic, tearing through the alien flagship's shields and striking at its core. But the aliens were not easily defeated. The enemy fleet retaliated with their own deadly weapons. Explosions rocked the battlefield as both sides exchanged fire, the stars above flickering in the chaos of war. On board the dreadnought, General Hernandez and his team coordinated every move, every strike with precision. It was a war of attrition, each side trying to outlast the other. But there was something more, something in the human spirit, a fierce determination that the aliens could not understand. "We will not fall," Hernandez muttered under his breath as he watched the chaotic battle unfold on the screens before him. As the battle raged on, the weapon that humanity had worked so hard to control was finally unleashed. The massive energy cannon on the dreadnought charged to full power, and with a deafening roar, it released a blinding beam of energy. The light was so intense that it illuminated the entire battlefield, blinding both sides for a moment. When the light finally faded, the alien fleet was scattered, their ships reduced to burning husks drifting in space. The sheer power of humanity's weapon had sent shockwaves through the alien forces, breaking their resolve. But the war was not over. The remaining alien ships, though damaged, began to regroup. The battle would continue, and humanity's victory, though assured, would come at a steep price. On Earth, the people watched the skies, waiting for news of the outcome. The fate of their world hung in the balance. But one thing was clear: humanity had proved its worth. The universe would never see them as insignificant again. And as the dust of the battle began to settle, humanity knew this was only the beginning. The universe had been shaken, and it was time for them to rise. The battle for survival was far from over, but humanity had shown that when pushed to the edge, they would unleash a force that no one could ignore. The universe had been warned. The universe's reckoning. The aftermath of the battle was nothing short of catastrophic. Across the void of space, remnants of the once mighty alien fleet drifted, silent and broken. The dreadnought stood at the heart of it all, its energy cannon still pulsing with faint light, a symbol of humanity's defiance. The explosion of power and destruction had sent ripples through the galaxy, marking the moment when humanity was no longer seen as a mere myth, but as a force to be reckoned with. General Hernandez watched from the bridge of the dreadnought as the reports flooded in. The victory was theirs, but it came at a cost. The human fleet had suffered losses too. Many brave souls had fallen in battle, their sacrifices etched into the stars. Yet, amid the sorrow, there was an undeniable feeling of triumph. Humanity had faced an empire that spanned countless worlds, and they had won. They had sent a message, loud, clear, and irrevocable. "We did it." Commander Eliza Harper, the dreadnought's captain, whispered to herself as she gazed at the wreckage of the alien ships. It was hard to believe. This was a turning point, not just for Earth, but for every civilization in the universe that might one day face the same fate. Humanity had shown what they were capable of, and there was no turning back. Across Earth, the news spread like wildfire. People cheered in the streets, united by their shared pride and relief. From the towering skyscrapers of New York to the vast deserts of Africa, humanity celebrated not just their survival, but their undeniable strength. It was the birth of a new era. No longer would they be viewed as insignificant, weak, or inferior. The universe had learned, in the most brutal way possible, that humans would never bow down to any power, no matter how great. But there was still the matter of the remaining alien forces, those that had managed to retreat. They would regroup. The war wasn't over, But humanity had proven that they were ready for whatever came next. Back in the galaxy's darkest corners, the alien empire was in disarray. The ruling council of the galactic overlords had watched their fleets fall, their warriors broken, their invincibility shattered. They had underestimated the humans, believing them to be no more than a footnote in the grand cosmic narrative. They were wrong, and now, the galaxy's most feared leaders were struggling to cope with their defeat. How could this happen? The alien commander hissed, his mandibles clicking in fury. How could a primitive species, barely out of their stone age, defeat us? We underestimated them, a subordinate responded, his voice tinged with disbelief. We thought they were just myths. But the truth is, they have the power to destroy us. They possess a potential we never thought possible. A tense silence fell over the council chamber as the reality of the situation settled in. They had lost. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted, and the once mighty empire was now forced to reckon with the human strength. This would not be the last time they would face the wrath of Earth. Humanity's victory sent shockwaves across the galaxy. News of the battle, the defeat of the alien invaders, spread far and wide. Other species, some friendly, some hostile, watched carefully. The universe had never seen anything like it. A species that had once been weak, fragmented, and isolated, now united, formidable, and ready to defend their place in the cosmos. "We've won this battle," General Hernandez said solemnly as he addressed his fleet. But the war is far from over. The galaxy is watching, and we will face new challenges. Our enemies will not forget today. But they will also never forget that we, humanity, are not to be taken lightly. He paused, allowing his words to sink in. There was a fire in his eyes, a spark that had been kindled in the flames of war. Humanity had tasted victory, but they also knew the sacrifices required to keep it. The cost of peace was high, and it was a price they would be willing to pay. In the days that followed, Earth entered a new age of unity. The war had brought nations together in ways previously thought impossible. Old rivalries had been set aside, replaced by a common purpose: to rebuild, to grow, and to prepare for the challenges ahead. The human race, though scared by the horrors of battle, stood tall, knowing that their strength and resilience had earned them a place among the stars. The leaders of Earth began to prepare for the future, focusing on strengthening their defenses, advancing their technologies, and fostering alliances with other peaceful species. They had seen the destructive power of their enemies, and they would not be caught off guard again. The war had taught them that survival depended on strength, unity, and unwavering resolve. And as the human fleet drifted among the stars, a new chapter in their story began to unfold. Their enemies had learned the hard way that humanity would never back down. The universe, once a vast and intimidating place, now seemed a little smaller. And humanity, standing as one, was ready for whatever came next. As the stars flickered in the vastness of space, one thing was clear: the universe had been forever changed. No longer would humanity be seen as a myth, as a forgotten race. They had proven themselves. They had fought, and they had won. And now, they would be the ones shaping the future. The universe had learned its lesson. Humanity's wrath was not something to be taken lightly.